Yeah, we'll get going in just a few minutes, or less than that, not a few minutes. Hope everyone got a chance to watch at least some of this this wild impeachment. Um, we'll get going, but before we get there, if you are, oh wait, did I do my captions right? Yeah, I did my captions right. Okay. Good afternoon. How are you? I think yesterday watching the former president's lawyer completely and totally embarrass himself, and it had nothing to do with the content. It had everything to do with just awful, just a really terrible presentation. And he ran through issues. He was getting rid of some lawyers. Some lawyers didn't want to stay on, and late in the game, brought some on. But the opportunity to be part of an impeachment trial is an amazing opportunity. To be in that unprepared and that type of performance last night was amazing. Yesterday, Elizabeth, I am feeling better. Yesterday was, it just kind of like hit me. It was like dead, and came home, pretty much overdosed on NyQuil and slept most of the day. So it was, and then had wonton soup delivered at night, and that was my day yesterday. So I woke up feeling better today. My voice is a little less congested, and so glad to be back on. But a couple things to talk about. But yes, if you have watched that impeachment trial yesterday, I'm looking forward to seeing what's supposed to be an amazing set of videos from the Democrats. You know, it's an interesting question. They're going after three aspects of Trump. Now, one, I'm not for the impeachment trial. He's out. I would just assume walk away, call it a day. But you know, and they can say he incited this and that he started this, and that he led and he incited those people to march on the Capitol. I agree. But the most damning aspect of the Democrats' case is going to be that he did nothing when this happened. If you're the president of the United States and there are residents and people, for whatever reason, marching on the Capitol, I'm not talking about a rally outside the Capitol, we're saying marching on the Capitol. How it took you hours to say anything. And then when you did, I remember that speech thinking, are you serious? It was one of those, yeah, don't do that, but I understand where you're coming from kind of speeches. Like, hold on, it was crazy. So I don't know. Will he be convicted? No, they won't get the number of Republicans they need to convict. That won't happen. So this is kind of just going through the motions, making your case, sort of thing. If he's not convicted, he's not prevented from running again. So we know he's not going to get convicted, barring some massive, massive shock. If he wants to run again, he'll be able to run again. So I don't know what the point of this whole thing is, but at the end of the day, you know, they're doing it. They're going through the motions. Hopefully, it doesn't hold up anything else. It can still get our stimulus done. We can still hopefully move forward with some sort of infrastructure bill in the near future. But we will see. Some of the comments, Steve, will they selectively edit again? Yeah, it's a trial. That's what happens at a trial. Everything is selectively edited. You know, the defense attorney and the prosecutor put on the information and the facts or whatever based on what they want the outcome to be. The purpose of having two sides and lawyers on both sides is to weed out what was selectively edited. So if something is edited to the point that it looks bad for one side, the other side can turn around and say, wait a minute, here's the whole video. Here's the context. That's what a trial is. And so that's why I advocate towards take the news that we take in and view it as a trial. When we hear a headline from somewhere, we get news from somewhere, we say we're very critical of that. Hold on, what's the context? What's the bigger picture? That's the job of lawyers. So, and I mean facts, just the information presented in a trial is biased by its own nature. The job of the jury is to get through that. And the jury here is the U.S. Senate. The U.S. Senate is Democratic, and we know the outcome. So it's a nice, you know, political exercise, I guess. I don't know what the end result, having a trial that will not result in a conviction when the president's already out of office. I don't know what we gain by that, but you know, there are people who want it, and it's politics, and it is what it is. So in any event, Let's move on to the state budget. So the state budget is crucial, and I'll tell you what I would do differently. But Lamont put out his budget address today, and some doesn't always put out the exact budget, but he puts out some parameters. And what he's basically saying is no significant tax increases, although he's delaying some tax cuts that were supposed to come. He is counting on 3 new revenue sources. One is marijuana, 2 is sports betting, and 3 is a fee on large tractor trailer trucks. So all of those, none of those are problematic. It is what it is. The issue I see, and this is the disappointing aspect of having the Democrats control the state for the last how many years, is why are we just passing this now? You know, he's talking about marijuana now. We still don't know if the Democrats have the votes for that, because there's a great number of Democrats who won't vote for it. We'll actually have Sean Scanlon back on. He's a Democrat who has not voted or supported for marijuana in the past. Sports betting. We have no idea if we'll be able to pass a sports betting law. The question on sports betting is exclusivity. Based on the deal signed in the past by the tribes, they're expecting to have exclusive rights to sports betting. Anybody who has exclusive rights to sports betting, that runs contrary to capitalism, runs contrary to everything we stand for as a country. We want a free enterprise. We want competition. And we know there are many different companies that handle or set up to handle sports betting now. For example, the company that handles the horse racing in New Haven, Sports Haven, called Winners, I forgot the actual legal name of it, but Winners, they're set up to do it. DraftKings, a publicly traded company that is set up to do it. FanDuel is set up to do it. There are other casinos like MGM who are set up to do it. And when you have multiple different organizations competing for those betting dollars, you have a better experience for the consumer. You know, they run specials to get you to go there. They run better lines. We explained this in the past, but when you bet a game, for example, let's suppose you bet the Knicks and the Heat yesterday, and the Heat were 6.5-point favorites. Well, if I'm getting 6.5 points, I may bet with one person. But if I'm getting a better line somewhere else, I would bet there. If we had exclusivity and those lines were set by one company or one casino, it is a disservice to me. And I'll tell you what will happen, and here's the real problem. By legalizing this, yes, you want to tax it, but you're also hoping to end or significantly reduce the illegal sports betting that's taking place. By the way, that everybody does. There's very few bars you can go to and not place a bet. There's a million websites that do it for you. There's a million offshore websites that do it. What you want to do when you legalize this is get money, so the recreational bettor may jump in. But those that are betting now, you want to give them an incentive, or at least I got the trial for some reason coming through on my hold on one second. The Senate come to order thing. In any event, sorry about that. We need to make sure that there is multiple options and not just one. And so I have not seen a plan to do that. And now if a law passes that allows that to happen, it will take 5 seconds for the casinos and the tribes to get this in court. So does that hold up potentially passing this? And the issue I have with both of these is they should have been passed 4, 5, 6, 7 years ago. Marijuana is about $30–35 million in revenue, but that will increase significantly over the next 2 or 3 years once it's legalized. That should have been started years ago. So if it was passed 5, 6 years ago, you're looking at the $250 to $300 million that could have come in that didn't. So to make that even worse, and I've made this point before, is that we knew this was going to pass eventually. If you asked any Democrat 5 years ago, will marijuana eventually be legal? Yes, of course. No question about it. So on some moral or ethical grounds or whatever, or we don't like drugs or the heroin issue, whatever it is, we said no to marijuana. The CDC has now declassified that. We've moved forward, but we could have been ahead. For being a state that is so blue and so progressive, we are so behind on so many things. And sports betting and marijuana is one of them. Right now, New Jersey is making a fortune on sports betting. We're not. We don't even know if we will get it through the legal system once it is passed, if it does in fact pass. And the final one is a tax on trucks, essentially on their mileage. That was always coming. I still believe we need tolls, but it doesn't look like that's going to happen anytime soon. That will likely happen the first year after Lamont is elected again, because it makes no sense to fight for that close to an election. So they'll wait till the next election and let that pass. But one point that's interesting in this budget, we talk a lot of times about Connecticut not being necessarily Democrat versus Republican, but our cities versus our suburbs. And the amount of money going to various towns gives us a very good indication of why. So in this budget, the Hartford Courant did a breakdown for us. They looked at town by town. So as those, not everybody watching knows this, but I'm in Branford. Branford, the first year of this budget, total of 3.68 million. The second year, 4.362 million. And the second year, 4.362 million as well. So, that 3.7 to 4.4 million dollars a year coming in to Branford. Much of that is ECS. That'll probably 2 to 2.5 million will be in that ECS dollars, and others will be pilot funds or funds for various other smaller road work, that sort of thing. We go to Guilford. Let me scroll down here. Guilford money per year. So first year 2.8 million, next year 3.1 million, and the year after that 3.1 million. We'll go to Madison. Madison, 1.3 million, 1.4 million, 1.4 million. So they're getting a little bit less than Branford is, less than Guilford is, but it's in that ballpark. We can probably go to North Branford. This will make the point as well. North Branford gets significantly higher. I don't know why. 8.2 million, 8.3 million, $8.3 million goes to North Branford. And a lot of that was looking at ECS dollars and the makeup of the school system. But let's compare that to New Haven. This is why it's towns versus suburbs. Branford was what, 3.8 million? New Haven first year, $232 million from the state. Let's go to Bridgeport. Bridgeport, $221 million. The second year, $254 million. The third year, $241 million. This is why this battle that we have and these series of laws, if you follow any Republican groups on social media, you'll see them post law after law after law for some new property tax or increased sales tax or increased whatever tax. And the whole purpose of that is to tax the suburbs more and get more money diverted to our inner cities. That's the purpose. Now, those taxes in general will never be supported by representatives in Branford or Guilford or Madison, but that's where all of the real political battles are taking place. The group of elected officials representing New Haven, Bridgeport, Hartford are a significant force. One, they're in Democratic towns, so they can't lose. Right? Very few Republicans represent inner city towns. So those guys are in there for a long time, and their positions are pretty safe. And they're pushing to get as much money as they can for their towns. Some of the questions here, Rob, isn't North Branford getting $8 million per year to go towards building a new school? No, that would be separate. That's a separate bonding issue. This is part of the budget. So the budget is divvying up income taxes, sales taxes. Those all go in other fees. They all go to the state, and then it's portion of that goes towards state costs, and a portion of that is redistributed back to towns. And cities get the bulk of that. I missed some of these questions. I'm sorry. Politicians just pissing through more tax dollars. Imagine how many people who are starving due to unemployment could be helped with those funds. That's true. What about the gas tax he just implemented? Yeah, that would not be part of the budget, but that may be part of the revenue. So that's probably true too. $14 more to fill up. How would they track mileage tax? I'm not sure. North Branford got you. Thanks. Yeah. So, yeah, the money for example, Branford got a significant amount of school. Let's go to Guilford. Guilford built a high school. Branford built Walsh Intermediate School. That money is a separate fund that It has to be approved. It's separate from, and that's bonded. It's not part of the budget. Paying back that is part of the budget, but it's not part. But the amount of money going towards schools in that fund has dropped significantly as well. So I don't know. It's an interesting time. But we don't have the full details of that budget yet. The Hartford Courant has a very good breakdown. Just go through some more of these towns of who gets what. Danbury, 46 million. So Danbury gets a big drop from the other cities. Manchester, 43. New Britain, 111 million. New Haven, 232. Let's see what Hartford gets. Hold on, let's check this out. Hartford's a disaster, right? 270. And then the second year, Hartford, $312 million. $312 million. Holy God. And Brantford gets 3.8. And that's why you have your political battle. Right there is the center of it, why you have a political battle. It makes absolutely no sense. This is amazing. So, okay, if there's any other questions, the only thing to talk about that I wanted to talk about in a little more detail, again, we have to wait on more details from that. The president, we could talk about the impeachment all day long, but there's nothing of consequence that's going to happen. It's not going to be convicted. He's not going to be convicted. At the end of the year, we're having this discussion, but we could talk about it, but it goes nowhere. There's nothing of consequence happening there. It's entertaining. It's great theater. It's great politics. But I'd much rather have, and this is why I had so much respect for Obama. There was immense pressure from the Democratic base pushing Obama to go after Bush for war crimes. Now, do I think he was guilty of war crimes? That's a whole other matter. But this idea of, okay, whatever happened, let's get past it, let's move on, was the mature thing to do. It was the right thing to do. It was the right thing to do for the country, especially being in the middle of an economic crisis. We're not in that significant of a different situation now. The base wanted to go after him, after Trump, no question about it. But we're in the middle of a pandemic. His 4 years was over. He left. What are we going to gain? What is this? How does this help democracy? How does this help us move forward? How does this help us through this pandemic? That's what I don't have the answer to. And that's why I keep watching this, and I watch the speeches, and they're emotional and they're great. But how much time should we as a general public spend time on something that's not going to make any difference whatsoever? We know the outcome. There's no way in a split Senate it's going to happen. It'd be absolutely shocking for enough representatives to say yes. They couldn't even agree to say yes, this should even be a trial. Okay, you can constitutionally try somebody after they're out of office. One Republican, I believe, sided with that viewpoint, primarily because the lawyer for Trump was so bad. He didn't make any valid points. It was nonsensical. So at the end of the day, we'd like to talk about things that actually have consequence more than just political theater. And Trump being impeached, it really does seem, as you go out in town and you talk to people and you're even reading online, it seems like all the Trump stuff has died down. Even his supporters, even those who are Republicans who voted for, by the way, 70+ million people who voted for him. Doesn't mean they're supporters, but they voted for him. Are all, let's go. Let's move on. Let's move past this. Let's figure out this pandemic. And so I'm not, and through, even for the Democrats, I'm not seeing a lot of Democrats saying, yeah, let's go get them. I'm not seeing a lot of the first impeachment trial, there was no one I can talk to that wasn't watching it. Nobody's watching it. Nobody, it's done. So at the same time, I would like to focus on, the big mistake Obama made when he got in office was he focused on healthcare, and that was vital. But he didn't really focus on the economy. He didn't focus on many other things that could have been done. We are staring an infrastructure bill in the face. It is the most likely bill to have bipartisan support. It is the most likely topic to have Republicans and Democrats on the same page. It would have a massive, massive positive impact on the country. It would help us get past the impending doom that's about to happen. Right now, stocks are incredibly high, almost, in my opinion, too high. We're probably looking at a pullback. A stimulus that'll pass will prevent that pullback probably for 5 or 6 months, maybe into September when that unemployment ends. So the stimulus money will come out. A child tax credit will be part of that. Unemployment at $400 a week will continue into September. Hopefully by then everybody has their vaccine. We're getting back to normal. And then stocks at some point have to have a correction. It's going to happen. An infrastructure bill would help avoid that. It would pour money into the economy, keep people working. You would have bipartisan support. I'd rather have all of our representatives, the Rosa DeLauros and the Chris Murphys and the Blumenthals and whoever they are, working on an infrastructure bill. Because that affects us. I want to see money specifically for Exit 53 in Brantford. I want to see money for the bridges and the roads that have been deteriorating for years that we have not been able to fix. It makes far more sense to me if I'm a Democrat and I'm saying, let's get past the crap, past the garbage. Let's move on to something that actually everybody's on the same page with. The stimulus is going to be debatable, right? You'll get some Republicans for it. Someone is smaller. Child tax credit will pass. There's Republicans for that as well. $15 minimum wage probably won't. That'll be difficult to pass. That actually significantly hurts southern states. But if you have this magic ticket and you can say, listen, our country is divided, our Senate's divided, our Congress is divided, but I have a bill here that stimulates the economy. We can get pet projects, even if we want to call it pork, into this for 50 states. Every single representative will have this. We did this in Brantford, not in Brantford, in Connecticut. We used to have this, I don't know if they were reinstated or not, called STEAP grants, STEAP. And they were like these little, here's $50,000, $25,000 to do like the sidewalk on the back of the town green in Brantford was a STEAP grant. It was basically a grant to allow every representative to have a little press conference and say, I got this. That's all it was. We got you $20,000 for signs in the park, something nonsense like that. But you can do that with an infrastructure bill. You can find jobs in every single district that those representatives, Republican and Democrat, can say to their people, I helped get this. That's a way to bring people together and have a positive impact on the economy. Instead, we have a trial. We know the outcome of the trial, but we're going to have it anyway. And most people aren't really paying attention. So I question why. I'm a Democrat. I think what Trump did was ridiculous. Part of what's happening here is these videos that they're going to show, and they've shown yesterday, are so effective because the people impacted by this Capitol breach are the jurors. They lived it. And some of the videos will be horrific. They were scared for their lives, no question about it. Can we make the argument Trump made it happen? I think you can. The question is, what do we gain by it? I think we gain far more by not having a trial, by being laser focused on an infrastructure bill, and bring every party together. That makes more sense to me. And I think that would have made more sense to Obama. That was his mentality. Instead of focusing on the past, how a war got started, let's focus on seeing past that against the wishes of his base. Again, I go back to Obama because Obama was far more of a centrist than people give him credit for. The right tried to paint him as far left. He was anything but far left. The healthcare plan he pushed, Romney put in Massachusetts. Initially started with the Heritage Foundation. Wouldn't go after Bush. Allowed fracking when the base didn't want it. And made us as a nation, not single-handedly, but a large part of us being energy independent was Obama. All that happened under Obama. There was nothing left about him. He was a centrist and intelligent. And that intelligence led him to say, let's move on, let's move forward. So I would not spend a lot of time on this impeachment. I've read about it. I've watched about an hour and a half, 2 hours of it over the last 2 days. Looking forward to seeing the video, but the video is going to be emotion. It's not really going to be facts. I don't believe in comparing Black Lives Matter rallies to what happened with the president. That makes no sense. They're not the same thing. At the end of the day, I don't think we're bringing our country any further by having an impeachment trial right now, especially about a guy who's not in office. So, and hopefully in the next 2 days, and tonight, hopefully we get a little more detail on the state budget and what those proposals are. We got a general feel for it. Do I think this state budget passes without any new taxes? No, I don't. I think the Democrats will step up and have to say we want to raise income tax or sales tax somewhere. And remember something about raising income tax. There are a lot of people struggling, but if you raise income tax only on those higher brackets, I don't think it moves the needle much. If it's raised a point or two, nothing over the top. Connecticut was in high demand, especially by high earners. When this pandemic happened, they fled to Connecticut. They fled New York, they came to Connecticut. Our home values skyrocketed and they had no problem paying it. So if they're going to pay an extra $50, $60, $70, $100,000 on an $800,000 home, is it crazy to ask them to pay an extra couple $1,000, an extra $8,000, $10,000 in income tax? They clearly didn't flinch about the property. Where 3 months earlier it was a $600,000 home and now it's a $750,000 home. They didn't flinch. They still came here. The idea that taxes scare people away in general is overblown. It does sometimes. Do we have people, especially at or near retirement age, who have a lot of money saying, you know what, I'm going to Florida? Sure. Stay in Florida 190 days a year? Sure, we do. But the question becomes, these people fled to Connecticut. Nobody was afraid of the taxes. Nobody was afraid to pay literally 8, 10, 12, 15% premiums on the property. There were bidding wars on everything. At one point, I saw a real estate agent, a popular real estate agent, post, we're getting 10 to 15% more that we will pay for anyone who put their house on the market. They were begging people to list because blank checks were being written. Let's not pretend the wealthy don't have money. Connecticut's a good place to live. It's a high quality state. We have a lot of resources here. We do a lot for our residents. There's a reason people want to come here. Are there circumstances where people will leave? Sure, there will be. But if you raise kids here and your kids are here, you don't want to go very far. And people weren't questioning whether they should come to Connecticut when they were fleeing New York. Now, will people move back to New York? We don't know. It could happen. It's probably a very good time to buy real estate in New York if you think it's going to return. I hope Broadway returns. I hope the Knicks return. They just announced today, by the way, the Knicks can have 2,000 spectators. Knicks and Ranger games can have 2,000 spectators. So we're starting to see some signs of getting back to normal. That's a good thing. How will this impact us down the road? Do we have a mass exodus in 2 years when all the New Yorkers move back to New York? Who knows? We could. But claiming that our taxes were the thing that kept us out when people were willing to spend 10, 15% more for property, despite our electricity bills, despite the high cost of living, they had no problem coming here. So the hate on Connecticut in that regard doesn't make sense. If I'm looking at it from a economic standpoint, the wealthy have money. During this shutdown, a lot of the wealthier got wealthier. A lot of the wealthy got wealthier. The people who struggled the most were lower people on the totem pole. Do I have an issue raising the income tax slightly on the top level at this point? What I would do is this. I would pass Lamont's budget and raise those taxes, put that money towards our deficits, and try to get ahead. We don't think that way, though. Because if we raise taxes, immediately, there'd be some legislator looking to say, wait a minute, we raised some more money, let's spend it. There's no concept of saving money. When it comes to bills, we just put that off. And a lot of that blame goes to the Democrats. They have complete control of state budget. Do I think Lamont's right? Yes. I think Lamont is smart. I think he's moderate. I think he's fiscally intelligent. And I think he's a poor general politician, but his ideas are right. You have a faction of the Democratic Party who are not going to agree with him. And in this case, I think a lot of Democrats agree that some tax increases have to happen. The shame is going to be that before we even implement those tax increases, we're going to have the money spent. That's the shame. That's the reason the state is in the continued mess it's always in. So there's a lot of questions about this budget. We're counting on marijuana. We're counting on sports betting. We're counting on the Democrats getting behind no budget increases. Those are big ifs. And I don't see all those things taking place. So if we get more clarification on the budget in the next day or two, we'll talk about it tomorrow. If not, we'll talk about it Monday or Tuesday. And I want to see what the breakdown is per town and where that money is going towards ECS. Somebody did ask, what are they getting money for? Many of those towns get a ton of money for their schools, ECS funding. Now, granted, New Haven has far more students than Brantford does, and it's a different economic level. They spend a couple thousand less than Brantford does on their per student. But still, that's why we have this political war. It's not Democrat versus Republican. It's our cities versus our suburbs, and you can see it in the funding. And the cities will keep fighting for more money. The problem I have with fighting for more money for your city is because you're using nonsense to fight. Oh, it's racist if we don't get more money. Let's not, we don't get to say in Brantford how New Haven spends their money, but most of the tax dollars that we raise goes to New Haven. That's unfair. Hartford can declare bankruptcy, but they get most of the money. Hartford, New Haven, Bridgeport, Waterbury, huge amounts of tax dollars that we all pay into, yet we don't have any representation in how that city is run, how many different departments they have, the total number of employees they get, how many different administrators do they have. We have that say in our towns, but we don't have that say in New Haven, in those large towns. So when New Haven passes a law or a representative puts out a law saying we want to put a 1% tax on property in Brantford and have it diverted back to us, no, I have a problem with that. That's just ridiculous. Does it have a chance of passing? Probably not. Okay. David White, did you mention SNDL? Okay, SNDL is a stock that was at 80 cents last week. I purchased a few thousand shares of it. It went from 80 cents to 120. I think I sold at 110. So I made 30 cents a share on a couple thousand. Nothing earth-shattering. However, what is it now? What is SNDL? It's called Sundial. It's $3.19. So David White's here. I told him to buy it at 80 cents. It is now $3.19. This is one of those. I'll tell you what my thought process was, why I told people to buy it. When the whole DraftKings nonsense was happening, not DraftKings, the whole GameStop mess was happening. Robinhood, the company that the platform that people traded on, many of these millennials traded on, shut down trading on 5 or 6 stocks. One was GameStop, but one was SNDL too. The reason they shut it down was their margin requirement. So when I put a trade into TD Ameritrade, they fund the trade, so they need the money to fund that immediately, right? So there's a behind the scenes thing. So they limited all these trades. So this stock SNDL, which is a marijuana player, is I think it's solar for marijuana. Is it solar? Okay, whatever it is. They shut it down. So my thought process was, it's an 80-cent stock. A lot of these kids don't realize what cheap means in the stocks. They want to buy it. So there will be built up demand to buy the stock when they remove the limits. And it happened. So I bought a bunch at 80 cents. It jumped up to 120, came back down to $1 or so. It is going nuts the last 2 days. I do not still hold it, but people who did buy it are doing quite well. And the question is, how much further will it go? And so, that's not an investing stock. That's not a stock I would ever suggest you buy with any significant amount of a portfolio. That's not a long-term investment. That is a take a chance, roll the dice. This might happen. I told you my logic. My logic turned out to be right, but most people are buying it just to buy it. And let's not be shocked if it becomes one of those Reddit stocks where it goes to $60. It could happen, but I'm not buying it. So I'm not suggesting you do, but it's one of those stories that's just the nature of some stock buying right now. We have kids on apps buying stocks that fundamentals don't mean anything. Actual research doesn't mean anything. They're just throwing money out there and hoping they get lucky. That's gambling. But some people do. More people will lose money than make money when you gamble. There's a reason casinos are in business, but some people will make you big. Okay, in any event, we kind of just rambled on there for 35 minutes today, but we'll be back tomorrow. Again, if there are questions, I wanted to talk about some local stuff as well. We've gotten a few questions on another question about Tabor. I'll explain that tomorrow. We're seeing nonsense issues get some airtime because we have some people in Brantford that are trying to make issues of everything. And it's annoying. It's obnoxious at our town meetings. But if there are people who legitimately want to know what the facts and what's happening, I'd be glad to answer those questions for you. So if you have those, send them in. I'll answer them tomorrow or Monday. Guys, it's still nice and sunny out. I'm going to try to go get some exercise in, and I will see you tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night.